I'd like to start by sharing my utmost gratitude and thanks to all ADCS colleagues for their tireless work for children and families right across the country. You and your teams do some of the most difficult and heavily scrutinised jobs in the country, and I thank each and every one of you for all that you've been doing. I know what tough times we've been seeing, but your enthusiasm, your dedication and your commitment have been a real credit to the whole profession. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Vicky Ford and I'm very honoured to be the Minister for Children. Since I was appointed Minister for Children and Families in February, we've faced unprecedented challenges from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The combined impact of infection, self-isolation and social distancing have meant significant changes to the way we protect and ensure the best for vulnerable children and their families. I've been so impressed by the way local authorities and your entire workforces have stepped into new ways of working, doing your utmost, as you always do, to support the most vulnerable children in the country in very, very difficult circumstances. And I know too that the toughest period for children's social care may be yet to come, as more children are seen when social distancing eases and the hitherto hidden harms come to light. There can be few greater leadership challenges in any public service career. I know the Secretary of State has put on the record his thanks for all of your hard work and flexibility during this period, and I echo this wholeheartedly. We've sought very much to help you in that endeavour. We've ensured vulnerable children, both those with a social worker and with those with EHC plans, would have a place at school. 8,000 former social workers have been added back to the register, allowing them to support local authorities over this period. We've provided over 200,000 laptops to local authorities and schools for the use of vulnerable children, and worked with Ofsted to second inspectors to help your efforts in places that need them most. We have needed to temporarily change some aspects of the law on special educational needs and disabilities, and to put in place temporary flexibilities on children's social care regulations. These changes were designed to balance the needs of children and young people with the ability of local authorities and health services to respond to the outbreak. Many local authorities have welcomed and used these flexibilities while still working hard to deliver services to vulnerable children. And I know, and we will all want to see recovery across our areas of responsibility. The Prime Minister has talked of building back better, and that is no less true of the work with vulnerable children than it is in other areas. Indeed, it is vital that we offer greater level of support in what will, I imagine, be a particularly challenging period ahead. But we do have a good deal to build on. More children have been reaching a good stage of development at the start of reception, which has increased from 52% back in 2013 to 72% last year. Looked after children now have the lowest persistent absenteeism rates of all groups of children and have seen a consistent fall in their permanent exclusions, so that they are now less likely to be excluded on average than all other pupils. And we've been closing the attainment gap. School standards have risen and disadvantaged children are performing better now than they did a decade ago relative to their peers. And we shouldn't underestimate the role that great social workers, educational psychologists and schools have had in helping to achieve this. We've seen improving Ofsted ratings for children's social care since 2017, reflecting that work in keeping children safe and supporting better outcomes for them. Since the 1st of June, early years settings have been able to welcome back children of all ages. An estimated 320,000 children were back in early years settings on the 25th of June, which is fantastic news. And last week's announcement that we'll be removing the requirement to keep children in small, consistent groups from 20th of July paves the way for our early years settings to welcome back even more of our children. We continue to see the return to school as being the most important thing we can do to support children's mental health and well-being. To ensure that children and young people with EHC plans can receive the support they need and return to school, we will not be issuing further notices to modify the EHC duties unless the evidence changes. But we will consider whether any such flexibilities may be required locally to respond to local outbreaks. I recognise the challenges the return to school will bring, from messaging and social distancing to inspection and attainment. And together we will need to ensure we overcome these to help all children get back into education settings in September. I also recognise the need to return to routine SEND inspections as soon as it's appropriate to do so. And I've asked Ofsted to work with the Care Quality Commission to visit local areas and support them in prioritising and meeting the needs of children and young people with SEND in the context of the pandemic. But I want to make it clear that these visits are not intended as inspections. I want them to be collaborative and supportive and to help give us all an insight as to how the system is working. And it is with this in mind that I'm also delighted to announce that I've formally commissioned Ofsted and CQC to develop a new inspection framework to be implemented when the current cycle ends. We're also working with Ofsted to restart inspections of children's social care settings. My first priority through the pandemic has been to ensure the safety of vulnerable children, and we will work with Ofsted so that they can visit as many providers as possible to provide assurance on the safety and well-being of some of our most vulnerable children. As we move forward on our priorities together, I'm aware of the funding pressures local authorities face to put these priorities in place and continue with their improvement plans. I can assure you that my officials and I are committed to working across government and with the Treasury ahead of a spending review. And again, your input will be invaluable as we build our evidence base. I'd also like to reaffirm my commitment to the SEND review, and specifically that it takes into account the changes in a post-pandemic system, and that it asks some fundamental questions to deliver lasting change. I'm clear that this review needs to be ambitious in setting out concrete options to address pressures in the system. And I want us to work together to improve these children's and young people's outcomes while striking the right balance between affordability and meeting the needs of families. I can also confirm that we're moving forward with the plans for the care review, and that it will be bold and broad, independently led, and reflect the experience of those who have needed a social worker and been in care, putting children, young people and their families at its centre. We will set out further details in due course. And finally, I'd like to start where I began, with a huge thank you for how you have responded to the challenges and increased pressures from COVID. The pace of work and change has often been relentless, and it is a testament to the sector for what you have achieved. I look forward to continuing our relationship as we move forward and ensuring that children and their families get the best possible start in life. Thank you.